And now, please give a warm welcome to the President and CEO of Simon & Schuster, Jonathan Karp.
Good evening. Working with Doris and reading her manuscript as it came in chapter by chapter has been one of the greatest experiences of my time at Simon & Schuster, and I hope you will all read her new book, which confirms why Doris has been called America's historian-in-chief. The 35 authors on tonight's program convey the luminous literary sweep of our list, and we are going to do our best to keep the action moving as fast as we can. To celebrate a century of Simon & Schuster, our authors will share a personal story about an experience, a person, an idea, or a book that was especially formative and meaningful in their lives as readers and as writers. We wanted to give you some humor up front, so we've invited an author who follows in the tradition of many of the comedians that we've published for 100 years. From Eddie Cantor, Groucho Marx, and Bob Hope, to Gilda Radner, Carol Burnett, and Amy Schumer. For pure laugh-out-loud humor, the funniest book that I've ever worked on is a bestseller called Is This Anything? And it is my pleasure to welcome the author, one of the greatest comedians of all time, Jerry Seinfeld. All right.
Worst possible way to introduce a comedian. You just heard it. That is the worst thing. It's actually hostile to say that, actually. But how about Schuster? So pissed that he got second billing, he jams Lincoln into his name in the middle of his life, going, well, if it's going to be Ann Schuster, I'm going to be Lincoln. I'll be Lincoln.
All right. Now, I understand that there was a book that sort of helped you, inspired you to become a comedian, that you read when you were young?
There was a book called The Last Laugh by Phil Berger. We talked about it. What about it?
How did it inspire you?
Well, it was the first book ever written just about this profession. Nobody had ever just tried to look at the profession, talk to the people that were doing it, and write about it. So, because, you know, when I was a kid watching comedians on TV, I literally didn't know how they said funny things. I thought maybe that they talk like this all the time. I didn't know that these are jokes that they figured out and practiced. I thought they just talk like that.
Okay.
But that was, you know, I was like 15, and then I had to figure out what they were doing.
All right, and I noticed when I was reading your manuscript when it first came in that a lot of your earliest bits seem to have been inspired by breakfast cereal.
Mm-hmm, yes.
And my favorite bit about the breakfast cereal was the bit about life. And I was just wondering...
Life cereal, yes.
Can you talk about the inspiration behind that?
Well, the inspiration is getting a laugh for your act. That's the inspiration. But it's just, you know, one of those things, you know, comedy is like looking at things that second time. You think, well, life, you know, I could see that's a big word. That's a big title. Okay, the magazine, Life magazine. Okay, fine. This is a cereal, and we're going to call it Life. I thought, how, you know, what were the other, how about Odies or Squares? Oh, no, this is much big. This is Life, I tell you. My kids love that joke, by the way.
It's a good joke. And you've sort of stayed on the breakfast cereal track. I guess you have.
I did a couple other things, but but I returned to it. Yes.
Yes, I'm trying to help you promote an upcoming project.
Thank you very much. You're going to really turn the tide with this promotion. This is going to make all the difference.
It's premiering on Netflix on May 3rd. Would you like to tell them what it is, or would you rather just assume?
So I made a movie about how Kellogg's invented the Pop-Tart. It's called Unfrosted, and it's not like Barbie. Barbie was made by Mattel. Kellogg's did not even know we were doing this. I got a very flimsy cover letter from a shady lawyer in the Valley. I showed it to Netflix, and I said, oh, well, we're completely legally allowed to do this. We'll take all their products, all their IP, all their characters. It'll be fine. And 3 weeks ago, we told them that we made this. And they actually were pretty good about it.
As they should.
Yeah.
So you told me that you actually got a lot of your ideas for these food-related bits from walking around through markets after you did your earliest shows.
Yes, I wasn't a drinker or a drug person, so after doing shows, comedians, we got to do something after the show, and I would go to supermarkets because they were so brightly lit, and there were so many things to look at, and so that's what I would do. Right. So I had a lot of food bits.
All right. Now, something else you've talked about is you didn't really, you weren't always so eager to write books, I think, because you like the audience. And yet for your audiobook for Is This Anything, you recorded it all by yourself without an audience in the midst of the pandemic.
Yeah.
I was wondering how that experience was for you.
Slow. Slow and quiet and just like marching through sand at the end of a bad day at the beach. Just trudging back to the car. That's what it was like. Thank you, John.
Reliving all those happy memories.
I mean, doing comedy to dead silence. Oh, God, it was just horrible. And I don't know if people liked it. I can't imagine that they would. But, you make people do this. You say, everyone does this. You have to do it. So I did it.
All right, and I guess finally I would sort of like to ask you, how has your writing evolved through the years? How have you changed as a writer, or how has your process changed?
The process is the same. I enjoy it more. I don't have to force myself so much. I realize this is really the only thing of value that I do. And I used to do it because I had to do it, because comedians, if you don't create new material, you die. You have to do that to survive. So it was just something I would just force myself to do. And then after many, many years, I started to actually enjoy it. Now I really enjoy it a lot. But you inviting me to do the book was the only time I ever stopped and thought, well, gee, what happened to me? How did I go from a kid in my room just wanting to do this thing that to me was like being an astronaut or a baseball player, and then I became that thing? How did that happen? And because you invited me to do the book, it forced me to stop and reflect on that, and that was a great experience, and I thank you for encouraging me to do it.
Well, thank you for writing the book.
Yeah.
You once said that that you kind of thought of yourself like as a singer-songwriter. Mm-hmm. That comedian, and people forget that before he does the stand-up, it's all written and meticulously crafted. And as his editor, I can tell you that you were revising bits that were decades old, right up to the time we published.
Yeah, I just like to play with them. They're just Legos. Words. A good writer, words are Legos. They're toys to play with.
Well, thank you for playing with us, Jerry. It is an honor to be your publisher. And Jerry Seinfeld.
Thanks, John. Thank you. Thank you.